I always say that if I prepare something, it's going to jinx it, so I never prepare anything, and I'm really, really happy about this. I think there's 5 people happier than I am.
Some directors list their favorites. Steven Spielberg doesn't list. He remembers. Across 5 decades, he's worked with the best in the world. But only 6 actors made it into his inner circle. Not for the awards, not for the fame, but for something deeper. One of them never needed direction. One made him laugh when everything was falling apart. Another simply showed up every time without asking why. These aren't just collaborations. They're creative bonds that shaped how Spielberg tells stories. So, who are the 6? And what did they give him that no one else could? Robin Williams. When Robin Williams stepped into the role of Peter Pan in Hook, he didn't just take on a whimsical character. He walked into Steven Spielberg's most emotionally turbulent production. Hook was spiraling, over budget, behind schedule, and creatively chaotic. Spielberg, who typically thrives on control, was unraveling. But Robin noticed. Every night after shooting, Williams would call Spielberg, not to talk about film, but to make him laugh. 15 minutes of improv, just to lift his spirit. In a storm of stress, Robin became Spielberg's lifeline. On screen, Robin's performance carried more than mischief. He brought a unique sadness to Peter Pan, an ache for youth, time lost, and growing up too soon. It wasn't just playfulness. It was pain hidden beneath wonder. That emotional undercurrent wasn't scripted. It came from Robin's instincts. And though Hook didn't become the film Spielberg had envisioned, it was too big, too loose, too messy. What remained with him wasn't the box office disappointment. It was Robin's heart, layered into every frame. Off-screen, their bond deepened. It wasn't a press tour friendship. It was personal and enduring. Even after Hook, they remained close. Spielberg didn't just appreciate Robin's talent, he admired his presence. Years later, when Robin died, Spielberg was shattered. He delayed filming Schindler's List, needing time to process the grief. In interviews, he described Robin as lightning in a bottle, and when that lightning disappeared, the room dimmed. Robin's death wasn't just a loss to film, it was a loss to Spielberg's emotional world. The thing that attracted Spielberg to Robin was not the gloss, but rather the wild chaos. That was what she had thrown on him, and the fact that she had not controlled him, but had headed him off the edge. It was one thing that one seldom got in Spielberg's films. With most actors, he builds the exact rhythms. With the wild Robin, he permitted something far more wild, something alive in the present. It was not always the cleanest, but it was human. And that, most of all, is what Spielberg remembered. Though he never directed the man again, Spielberg continued to think of Robin with the utmost reverence. He was not the actor for Spielberg when the subject turned to war or historical depth. He was the actor who reminded him what storytelling was all about. Robin did not bring technique to the fold. He brought soul. He made Hook, the troubled set, become a highly personal chapter in Spielberg's life. And in a career of calculated greatness, Robin's presence was the beautiful variable Spielberg never tried to solve. The fact that Robin Williams may not take an Oscar under the list of Spielberg's films is not much of a concern, as he lives in it through an imprint that runs deeper than awards. One picture, with one manic, generous spirit, gave Spielberg something no other actor could: human warmth, at a time when production was alternately balmy and icy. Such a gift does not dry out for that kind of person. It lingers, like laughter after a storm, like lightning in a frame. That performance left the room glowing. But this next actor became Spielberg's emotional oxygen. Tom Hanks. When Steven Spielberg cast Tom Hanks, it wasn't just about filling a role. It was about finding a creative twin. From the very beginning, their connection ran deeper than typical director-actor chemistry. Hanks didn't come into Spielberg's world seeking to impress. He came prepared, grounded, and ego-free. Spielberg didn't need to mold him. He simply trusted him. That trust would become the foundation of one of the most quietly powerful collaborations in modern film. Their professional history reads like a cinematic time capsule. Saving Private Ryan, Catch Me If You Can, The Terminal, Bridge of Spies, and The Post. Each film explored deeply human themes: war, morality, fragility, and resilience. But what's striking about their dynamic is the absence of drama. No on-set tension, no public declarations of friendship, just consistency. Hanks once said, "When Steven calls, I don't ask what it is, I just say yes." That wasn't flattery. It was a creative vow. On the set of Saving Private Ryan, Spielberg famously gave minimal direction. Just a glance or a whisper, and Hanks would find the truth in the moment. That level of shorthand is rare in filmmaking. Spielberg didn't have to explain emotion. He trusted Hanks to instinctively find it. It wasn't about commanding a performance. It was about setting the scene and letting Hanks breathe life into it. The result was natural, grounded storytelling that never needed to announce itself. In Spielberg's eyes, Hanks is irreplaceable because of his emotional precision. He doesn't take away from the scene. He levels it. Spielberg has said that Hanks supplies the emotional oxygen his films need. Whether it's portraying an unwilling captain in a war or a principled journalist guiding his way through extreme political chaos, Hanks delivers performances that anchor Spielberg's wider cinematic universe. He gives an audience something to believe in, not through forceful means, but merely existing in the truth of that moment. Hanks stands different in that he serves to support and not impress. No noise, no ego. Hanks brings gravity. To Spielberg, Hanks is steadfast above all else. Hanks is the constant in an unpredictable, shifting world of tones, genres, and times. The invisible strength Hanks offers is what has kept the storytelling grounded, film by film, for Spielberg. It is foundational, not showy. Over 25 years now, things have evolved from a partnership into what now seems some sort of creative amalgamation. Spielberg gives Hanks his most personalized and grippingly emotional material because he trusts Hanks will not violate their spirit. In return, Hanks enters into Spielberg's legacy as itself, not in the loud proclamation, but in a silent, constant presence. It is a relationship not founded on glamour, but on trust. And with every film, that trust has gradually been cemented into timelessness. Daniel Day-Lewis. When Steven Spielberg cast Daniel Day-Lewis in Lincoln, it wasn't a simple casting, it was an invocation. Day-Lewis didn't rehearse traditionally, didn't audition, and didn't gradually discover the role. When he stepped onto set, he was Abraham Lincoln. Spielberg later described the experience as time travel, saying there were moments he genuinely forgot they were making a movie. This wasn't method acting for show. It was a full transformation, silent, internal, and hauntingly real. Spielberg, a director known for his hands-on precision, took a different approach with Day-Lewis. From the moment production began, he addressed him only as Mr. President, both on and off set. Not for spectacle, but because it felt right. There were no instructions, no redirections. Spielberg didn't so much direct Day-Lewis as he witnessed him. That kind of deference was unprecedented for Spielberg, who typically shapes performances with subtle control. But with Day-Lewis, he knew the best direction was distance. Interestingly, this collaboration almost didn't happen. Day-Lewis had turned Spielberg down more than once. It took years of patient persuasion before he agreed to take on the role. But when he did, the outcome was historic. Lincoln became one of Spielberg's most critically acclaimed films. Day-Lewis won his third Oscar for Best Actor, and Spielberg received universal praise for the film's tone, restraint, and humanity. Yet Spielberg didn't take credit for the performance. In interviews, he simply said, "I didn't direct him. I just witnessed him." That deep-set humility speaks responsibly. Day-Lewis did not perform in Lincoln. Instead, he reshaped Spielberg's entire thought process about acting. Lincoln came powerfully not from exclamations or vibrant crescendos, but from pauses, breath, and quiet moments. Day-Lewis generated an extraordinary sense of tension without the slightest hint of theater. He offered empathy without the slightest hint of explanation. What Spielberg learned at that moment was to allow the actor to create space rather than solely occupy it. That insight extended well beyond the confines of the set. After Lincoln, Day-Lewis was never seen in Spielberg's orbit. Not through spite, but simply because lightning doesn't strike the same place twice. Their collaboration was one of a kind, closed with one take, but left its mark. More than just a successful movie, Spielberg learned about restraint, about how powerful a moment can be when a director knows not to interrupt. Daniel Day-Lewis may perhaps be the sole performer on Spielberg's short register with whom he has collaborated just once. And that project was quite foremost in significance. He was not an actor who would appear repetitively in Spielberg's films, but his presence left behind something deeper: respect. Respect not only for the role, but also for the quietude, the room, the idea that sometimes the best direction is to allow it to happen. For Spielberg, that was not just rare, it was unforgettable. Keep your seat, because the next actor didn't just make history, he ran through it with a bullwhip and no stunt double. Harrison Ford. To the world, Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. But to Steven Spielberg, he's more than a cinematic icon. He's a compass. Their creative partnership began with Raiders of the Lost Ark, a fedora, a whip, and a knowing smirk that launched a legend. But behind the myth, there was a steady presence Spielberg could always count on. Ford wasn't flashy. He wasn't political. He just delivered again and again, without fuss, without ego. Spielberg once said, "Harrison brings confidence into a room, and when the camera rolls, that confidence becomes myth." What made Ford indispensable was his ability to ground fantasy in something real. He wasn't just a hero. He bled, he groaned, he got back up. On the set of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Spielberg recalled a moment where Ford insisted on doing a stunt himself. He told Spielberg, "If I get hurt, you'll know it was worth it." That kind of commitment wasn't about proving anything. It was about giving the story everything he had. No shortcuts, no double takes, no ego. Ford never needed to dominate a scene to own it. Spielberg has said that Ford gives him authenticity on demand, whether it's humor, pain, or pure physicality. And unlike other stars who try to steal the spotlight, Ford doesn't need to. He is the spotlight. In an industry full of noise, Ford's silence became his signature. He didn't campaign for roles. He didn't charm the press. He simply showed up, did the work, and let the camera do the talking. The trust in each other never wavered over the 4 Indiana Jones films. Spielberg never hesitated to call Ford. There could only be one Indiana Jones, no auditions, no second thoughts. Spielberg has said outright that if he were ever to make another adventure film, it would be Ford all over again. Their bond was unshakable, based upon creative instinct rather than friendship or publicity. Ford would have the wisdom to know when to take the wheel and when to stand down. That rhythm kept their partnership ageless, an elemental force in Spielberg's filmmaking. Where every detail is lovingly manufactured, Harrison Ford never broke the structure more than he entered it. He blended into it. Ford's performance never presented itself, but rather lent weight to Spielberg's film. It was the emotional truth upon which larger stories stood. Ford's Present, or A Chase After Relics, or Confrontation with Nazis, was not merely an acting, but the physical manifestation of cinematic presence. Harrison Ford is more than a leading man to Spielberg. He's a cornerstone, the quiet actor who manages to be legendary, the man who humanizes a superhuman. Through all the extravagance of his films, Ford remained the calm in the chaos. He never just occupied the frame. He became the frame. And through all the decades of his making of films, Spielberg never once looked for anyone else. Meryl Streep. Steven Spielberg waited nearly 4 decades to work with Meryl Streep. For years, he admired her from a distance, calling her one of the finest performers of her generation. But when the opportunity finally came with The Post in 2017, it felt less like casting and more like destiny. The film was rushed into production to respond to the political climate, and Streep joined late in the process. Yet, the moment she stepped into the role of Katharine Graham, it was as if she had always belonged there. Her performance wasn't loud or dramatic. It was calculated, internal, and controlled. Spielberg described directing her as conducting a symphony with only one instrument. Every breath, every glance, every pause was deliberate. She didn't dominate the screen, she melted into it. Spielberg admitted he felt nervous directing her, a rare confession from a director known for commanding every frame. But with Streep, he barely had to direct at all. Her instincts and understanding of the material were so refined, the performance unfolded naturally. In The Post, Streep played a woman rising into power, learning to lead in silence before speaking with force. That mirrored her own on-set presence. Spielberg gave her the space to lead without noise. She didn't demand attention. She earned it through stillness. It was a masterclass in restraint, and Spielberg recognized it instantly. He compared her performance to Daniel Day-Lewis in its surgical control and deeply human quality. She didn't need to be the loudest in the room. She was the room. The film earned Streep her 21st Oscar nomination, but Spielberg's praise went far beyond awards. He termed her essential, not just to the film, but to cinema. It wasn't a throwaway line for interviews, it was a proclamation. Streep didn't just fulfill Spielberg's vision after decades of waiting. She surpassed those expectations. Such lingering impressions aren't made to be forgotten. Along with failing worldwide revenue, it was about presence, not just acting. It is said that regardless of whether they worked together once or 100 times, Spielberg would gladly abandon every project to work with her again. Their artistic tie was not based on repetition, but precision. Such a moment, one film, one time, one voice, resonated farther than many multi-year relationships in entertainment. Legacy is created not only through trilogies or franchises. Other times, it can be accomplished through one immaculate pair at the right time. For Spielberg, Meryl Streep wasn't just a great actress. She changed the energy of a room. the rhythm of a story, and the feel of the camera when it moves. In a career full of stars and spectacle, Streep gave him a condition much quieter but no less powerful clarity. She didn't just partake in the post, she became the center of its moral gravity. And Spielberg, who remembers not actors for hype, but for the resonance, has never forgotten the weight of her silence. If you think fame defines a career, wait until you see how this actor rewrote his with one film. Leonardo DiCaprio. When Steven Spielberg first worked with Leonardo DiCaprio on Catch Me If You Can, the world still saw Leo as the face of Titanic, a boyish heartthrob riding the wave of superstardom. But Spielberg saw something much sharper beneath the surface. He didn't see a teen idol. He saw precision. He saw control. He saw an actor who could cut through a role with quiet accuracy. "He's got a clock inside him," Spielberg would later say. "He never misses a beat." What others saw as charisma, Spielberg saw as discipline. DiCaprio's role as Frank Abagnale Jr. wasn't just a slick con artist, it was a broken boy in a suit, running from his fractured home life under a polished smile. Spielberg leaned into that vulnerability, and DiCaprio delivered. He didn't just perform the character, he inhabited the contradictions. Beneath the confidence was fear. Beneath the swagger was sadness. And through it all, DiCaprio kept total command of the frame. Spielberg didn't need to mold him. He just had to let the rhythm play out. What impressed Spielberg most was DiCaprio's internal process. On set, he treated every scene like a map, plotting emotion, anticipating tension, reading the unspoken. There was no guesswork, no hesitation. Despite being the youngest actor on the set, Leo carried himself with quiet authority. He didn't demand attention. He simply earned it. Their collaboration had no backstage drama, no creative friction, just clear, instinctive alignment between director and actor. There now seemed to be a promise of more to come after Catch Me If You Can, as Spielberg and DiCaprio discussed a great many projects for the two of them to work on together. A Howard Hughes biopic, a courtroom drama. However, the timing was never right. Nevertheless, Spielberg has continuously bestowed praise upon DiCaprio for his versatility, for his presence, for that heartbreaking performance in The Revenant. This sustained admiration years after the pair's sole collaboration speaks volumes. Spielberg respected DiCaprio as someone he had unfinished business with. What sets DiCaprio apart within Spielberg's limited company of favorite actors is how much he accomplished with just one collaboration. There was no long list of collaborative material for Hanks or Ford to refer to. The depth of that one project, however, remains painfully alive with memories. One movie, he learned, could tell a director all he needs to know. Unleashed emotion met precision under DiCaprio, and chaos became lifeless when placed into competent hands. For Spielberg, certainly, he was not just a surprise, but a revelation. Even a master of cinema is not immune to the discovery of greatness. DiCaprio is the one who escaped the ritual completion present in Spielberg's films as he delivers this act of omission, but not without a stain. Perhaps the optimist is Spielberg, for he may not have turned for Leo in a second movie direction, but he has never stopped circling the thought. One film, infinite potential. And the door? Never fully closed. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite Spielberg actor, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into film and storytelling. And if you're ready for more, go ahead and click the next video on your screen. There's plenty more to explore. See you there.